Here we are again with another bicep pose to start the show and another episode of Chatting with Charlie. And today, this is a very special episode because for me right now, it is 7:30 p.m. and I'm about to enjoy a glass of wine. And for my guest today, Alex, he is just waking up in Australia, where he is escaping the children for an hour, as we will get into it. But without further ado, Alex, thank you very much for being here. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So, just to preface, me and Alex found each other again through specifically New Money. I guess it's worth mentioning them, but really, as I would say, the wave of males that are finding themselves to groups and tribes online with very set specific types of goals, targets, similar mindsets, and we're all kind of bouncing off each other since we realized that most of the people that connect to us are online and not actually in our physical space. So as we go through this episode, I'll be learning a hell of a lot about Alex myself, and I'm sure Alex will be learning even more about me in this episode. So first question I kind of want to start off with, Alex, is how would you best describe yourself to someone? You know, if someone was to say, who is Alex?
It's an interesting question because you're, as Alan Watts says, you're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. And so I think I'm in flux constantly, which is kind of where New Money has kind of come in, because the version of myself that I was running, this version who was consuming a lot, this version who was drinking a lot, this version who was escaping a lot, wasn't really optimal. It wasn't really the greatest operating system that I was running. So at the time, if you would have asked me 2, 3 years ago through my 20s, it was probably someone who was escaping, just trying to find ways to escape, not really having a you would probably call it an NPC. I think that phrase gets kind of put around again, around you're kind of consuming a lot of different things but not producing a whole lot. Um, Whereas now I think I'm the other side, and where I'm a producer, in which I'm actively looking for ways that I can create and trying to consume a lot less. So I just finished a 3-day fast. That's a good way to not consume anything, and trying to find ways in which I can optimize to which my output is greater than my input. So that's probably broad brush answer, but certainly I think it's something that I feel I like to evolve and I like to change, because if I can find a better way, a better modality across all the different facets of life and keep changing them, then, like Mr. Sunshine says, we're getting towards our optimal self or our ultimate self. And that's, all that anyone should aspire to be, or at least I feel that's what I should aspire to be anyway.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. Great answer. For a couple of reasons for me to stand out. One, because it's not the answer in itself, it's the response. And for me, it's always a difficult question. I mean, it's a commonly used question, but you do have an infinite capacity to answer it in a certain way. And it's refreshing to float around in that tone of, do you know what, it always changes. You know, there's nothing specific about that, and it's liberating actually. It's more, dare I say, spiritual, because it's not particularly one thing. But you have given us an insight there. Great observation I just made is change. And one thing that you was also giving us contrast with is somewhere that you were before. So somewhere along the lines, something's come in as a catalyst, Alex, and triggered this change inside you. What is that?
When I was 15, I had an idea, or this concept that kind of came to me. I imagined the whole world turning blue, and I continued that train of thought to think, what if someone was yellow within this world of blue? How would they exist? How would they get around? This idea has bugged me in the back of my head since I was 15, and eventually turned out to be the book that I recently published. What was a constant through this kind of hedonistic stage of mine was that I always had it in the back of my head that I needed to be doing this thing, but I was doing the other thing. So it was creating this contrast of almost this cognitive dissonance of, well, I'm not doing the thing, but I want the thing. And so it was a balancing act of, okay, I'm doing escapism, but I'm not writing. Or I would do a little bit of writing and then fantasize how amazing it would be and not write at all. So there was a constant series of kind of peaks and troughs of trying to figure out, how do I become the kind of person that is a writer? And how do I become the kind of person that can sit down and write 100,000 word book? So it actually only came to fruition when I discovered about leading and lagging metrics, in which I managed to do it mathematically, in that a lag metric is something that you cannot change. It's your weight, it's the number of words at the end of a book, it's your bank balance at the end of the month. You can't change what it is, it's a static number, right? But a leading metric is all the actions that you can take to influence that lag. So, how often you go to the gym, what you eat, how many words you write per day, how many cold calls you make, or sales calls, or products you put up on your store, whatever it is, you have an influence on that lag. And so I found out, and it's the 4 Disciplines of Execution by Stephen Covey, which is awesome, in which you build yourself a scoreboard that has this lag and lead metric. And what you can do, and a lot of other people have done it, it's not my idea, is you create a visual chart of the number of words that you're trying to hit, and you have the date of which you want it by, it's your lag, and then you divide it, that number of words, by the number of days. And so for my book, I wanted it to be published in February. So I said, okay, I'll kind of have this all wrapped up by Jan. So, and I think at the time it was probably the middle of the year. So I'm like, okay, it's June, July, say, to January. I need to write X number of words by this date. So it's 350 words per day, and I can chart it. I can chart how I'm going across this whole series of days. So as long as I hit that, I know I'm going to get the target that I'm looking for. And that was a game changer for me, because I wasn't second guessing, okay, I could do, 2,000 words here, and then I write nothing, and then I do 100 words, and then I do nothing. It's like, well, and PJ Fogg talks about this in Tiny Habits. If you have this barrier of entry that is low, of what you can just hit on a day-to-day basis, then it becomes easier to build that as a muscle. So for me, that was huge, in that I just needed to hit this consistently over a period of days, and then my book turned up. So now I'm doing the same thing for the second right now, just going back to that aspect of, okay, if I want something by X date, all I need to do is reverse engineer it. Let's get clear what it is that I want and when I want it, and reverse engineer it to go, what do I need to do each day to get there?
Yeah, as you're speaking now, like I swim in a naturally altered direction. And for me, I really depend on improvisation, of like channeling in a moment, being there, improvising almost intuitively. But as I go through that, I stumble across patterns, cycles, grids, you could call them, formulas. You mentioned maths there. And some of the principles, tiny habits, like all the language resonates with me as things I've experienced through this improvisation. But I am always fascinated in the the difference between the two sides of that coin, full improvisation, you know, like almost you could say right brain, intuitive free flow. And then there's a side where I feel like you're swimming in both of them, but definitely there's this kind of, and maybe I'm not right in the metrics of this, but the left side of, there's the data, there's the quantifiable, there's the sheets, there's the chart. And for me, I've realized the middle ground of both of them is really kind of peak performance level. And I would say that the discipline, the structure that you've mentioned, is the crucial matrix, almost like the framework of what's needed to actually succeed. And I take a lot from this. And one thing I'm already grateful for is the osmosis of this moment, to be around this and actually just let my brain take this in at the same time as whilst you're going through those metrics, flowing through them. Does this make sense to you? Does this resonate with you at all, Alex?
Absolutely. You need to have duality. There isn't a left brain kind of creativity, right? You can't force creativity in this, set time frame. You can try, but you're probably not going to be able to be as effective unless you kind of give it space and let it breathe. But and conversely, you can't do kind of right brain analytical thinking, if I'm getting the right sides of the brain correct. It's the duality, so you have to find that sweet spot. I had all these creative ideas of where I wanted the book to go. So I had a lot of space to improvise and play around. When I first started writing this book, I got 3/4 of the way through and realized it was the fourth. So I had to park it and go back to start again. And it was only through kind of improvisation, that's not a word, it's only through being able to kind of play around with, because I can't say the word because it's 5 a.m., play around with a lot of these different ideas. And it was through that consistency of the structure, the system, that I was able to iterate upon it and make it better. So you need to have that balance of the both. And you're right, if you can find that sweet spot, then you're off to the races. Because what is it, James Clear talking about? We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. I had an amazing goal for what I wanted to do, but I had no system. As soon as I implemented the system, away we go.
So true, so true. The system is, it's almost like the magic carpet. You know, it's the thing it's taking you along the journey, the system. The system is the part in which carries you, almost like the car. You know, the car is the system in which drives you, but really you are the driver. You choose the direction in which you choose to drive super safe and straight and narrow and turn left perfectly, or you're drifting around corners and you're breaking the rules. You're kind of out doing whatever, but the system is what carries everything. And it's actually something that comes up a lot in my work, implementing systems into places that there aren't any. And drastically, Alex, what I see is, boom, this explosion immediately of more time, more energy, and focus. What's going on there, Alex, specifically when someone implements a system? Why is it we feel like we can achieve so much more?
I think it's liberating because we've now given ourselves license to have control over the situation, in that previously, and the creative aspect of ourselves is very chaotic and very all over the place. Like, you wouldn't trust a creative person to balance a spreadsheet, right? It's just not something that they're good at. But give them a painting and they absolutely bang out something amazing. Conversely, you don't put an accountant in front of a painting. It's like, and we have both sides of this in ourselves. We need to know what strength we're playing to for what activity that we're doing. So for myself, being naturally kind of creative, I lean more towards the creativity side, but don't have the structural side at that time in my life. And now that I've kind of built that muscle up around systems and going, okay, if you want to have if you want to feel like you've had a good day today, here are the activities that I feel get me into a state of contentment. As if I was to review this day, this would be, a magnificent day. There's a concept around it, around, plan out what your magnificent day looks like. And again, everything's kind of in flux, so you can't always have this day, but if if you feel like you're making progress, then typically you're going to feel like it is a rewarding day, or you would have that day again. If you can see that needle is being moved, then that is I think the critical factor for continually repeating to that activity. Like visually, I used the scoreboard of the lagging and leading metric because I could see this little red line getting closer and closer to my 100,000 words. And if I looked at it each day, it was this little feedback loop, because it was like, cool, all right, I'm getting closer, I'm getting closer. And you don't necessarily just have to have that for writing. You could have it for your nutrition. You could have it for your ecom store. You could have it for anything. Like it's possible across those anything, because you're playing now in both sides of the brain to go, okay, I can input this data and I see something visually. And if you keep in the 4 disciplines, if you keep a compelling scoreboard, it's like, cool, no, I can see myself making progress. And every day you see this progress that's being made, it reinforces and it compounds, because you're like, okay, this is cool. All right. And you're turning the flywheel and it goes faster and faster and faster. And the more systems that you can find to implement for the different aspects of your life that you want to optimize, then the faster and faster you spiral upwards into where you want to be. So if you want to optimize your exercise regimes, your nutrition, your finances, your money making, whatever it is, there's ways that you can reverse engineer it. So it can go, okay, I need to spend half an hour networking. I need to spend X amount of time doing Y, whatever the case may be. And you'll be shocked to see, if you're planning that accordingly, how much progress you can actually make of where it actually goes. Because a lot of it, and for my 20s, was kind of left to chance. I was kind of flitting all over the place and not having any structure. As soon as I implemented, this is what I want my days to look like, and these are the activities that I want to move needles on, everything changes. And so it's a long-winded answer to to know that you can optimize across any possible facet of your life, but it's not implemented with just left brain or right brain thinking. You have to have both.
Mm. First thing I'll say is a long-winded answer is often appreciated here on this show, because I like to think of this show, really chatting with Charlie, is trying to capture the nature and essence of what is never seen ever on the internals of what goes on inside. Relationships really being the core to everything and what goes on in certain relationships. And really, it's almost like expressive tennis, in which we have to allow the most fluid, quote, natural thing to come out when we actually express something. So what I hear is you're doing that. I observe many things, but what I hear is I start to see these little pictures in my mind. And you said move the needle on the grid, which would enable this kind of quantifiable feedback. You need to see progress, which would link to some chemical response of, I feel good, I can see progress. It's nice to know, even a trivial example on Deliveroo, that your pizza's 20 minutes away. It's like, oh, I can see what's going on. There's something
cool
going on there. I mean, like, apply that to what you said as these examples of, I'm actually losing the weight in the gym, or I'm moving towards my 1,000 words, 100,000 words, sorry. And this technique, I find, if I can call it that, this technique, I find I implement in these ways, and I don't necessarily structure in such. And there's levels to this, Alex. I'd be interested to know a little bit more about like any apps or anything tangibly that you think this is a great app that helps me with everything. But what I want to lead this to is this methodology, whether you want to do anything, is universal, applied towards everything. If you can understand the formulas, I talk about these a lot, the formulas of life that enable you to get results. I had this conversation just today about the only thing that matters is that there's a true effect. Actually feel something is changing, then drastically you can scale what you want to do. Is there anything that you use as like a common go-to that always enables you to feel like you are progressing?
Yes. So I use my own scoreboard to track those metrics that I feel I want to change. And so combining and keeping that kind of scoreboard of, okay, across these possible metrics of meditation, of writing, of exercise, did I do it or didn't I? Like, yes or no? And it's compelling in that when you hit Y on it, the little chart goes green. And when you go no, it goes red. And when you start to build up a streak, you don't want to break it. And so it becomes you gamifying yourself. And it's like, oh, I gotta keep the streak alive. Gotta keep the streak alive. And that's a little hack that you can play on yourself to go, okay, this means this is important to me. This is something that I want to track. So let me gamify this this process, because that, the gamification of apps, like your example of the Deliveroo is a great one, of which, when you use like Duolingo, you can see like the fireworks go off when you get like a right word or an example like that. This is kind of neurochemical stuff being released that I don't pretend to understand dopamine, most likely, but you're doing it for something that you're interested in moving those metrics on. And so even just a little streak of greens in a row for how many times you've meditated, like, I can't break this, like, I've got to keep going. And if you see it and you review it every day, it's encouraging to try and have that day again, because these factors are what is important to you, right? So you can have whatever habits you want to have. So if it's exercise, or if it's meditation, or if it's eating well, or whatever the case may be, if you just want to try and aim to have that day consistently and track it so that you're having that day consistently, you're going to see the progress that you're after, right? So you can track, you've got the data now for weight loss, to some of the new scales that are out there to track like body fat percentage and like lean muscle mass and all these different things. You can track that and you can see that on a scoreboard and go, oh, I was, 14% body fat and now I'm 13.5. Oh, that's fun. And now I'm, it'll fluctuate because that's what weight does. But as an example, it's fun to track because you can see, oh, I'm making progress. Oh, it's going down, because, that progress is not a linear path, right? It kind of goes like that. But as long as it's for the weight loss, as long as it's kind of zigzagging down, and for the book writing, as long as it's kind of zigzagging up, you're going to feel that reinforcement to continue to do the said activity. So gamify it would be the trick that I think, for anyone that's looking to build that muscle. Gamify the process to make it easier for yourself to have that day consistently, and fall in love with doing these things so that you can see that progress.
Man, I want to stay on that platform there you've created here. See, it's like another scaffold layer, and the gamify for me relates to many ways, and I'm always very fascinated with etymology. And for anyone that's not familiar with that, it's just the origins of words, what we're portraying when we speak, the words that we use have actual meaning and matter that's created by the sound and the vision that's generated in your mind. And when you say game, I think of play. When I think of play, I think of fun. When I think of fun, I think of flow. When I think of flow, I think of peak performance. When I see peak performance, I see the best achieved results that comes off the bedrock of gamifying, which in its inner workings in the engine is the internal structures, the data that we're talking about. So let's swim above the surface. Let's come out of the engine now. Let's actually look at the beautiful polished Porsche and go, wow, life is actually a game here. We can truly gamify life and level up. And one thing I want to really elevate this conversation to, Alex, and definitely get your perspective, add some volume to this subject that's needed in the internet world, which is we are leveling up our characters or we're not. And there's starting to be a great separation, like the parting of the seas, of people that are and people that are not. And just simply by kind of swimming in this category, and I will bring it to a question, I'm sure it will arrive, which is why is this important, Alex? Why is it important to play the game of life? Why is it important to level up? Why is it not like, what's the problem if there is one? Forgive me in my language here and take this with a pinch of salt as I swim here. But if you don't play the game and you don't elevate, if you've got anything to lose, can't you just have a good life anyway? Why would someone want to do this?
It's a really great question. And I think at our core, we know if we're not playing the game right, because we've seen what happens to people when they play the hedonism game, of which they consume and they don't give back. You know, there's a dissonance that certainly I've experienced in my lifetime of consuming more than giving is just empty, really. It doesn't give you anything. It doesn't fill you up. It's kind of a lot of the foods now, kind of like you're feeding on life as though it's a those meals that leave you hungry after you've eaten them, which seems to be prevalent everywhere. It's that same kind of concept of which it's just empty kind of feeling. It's like, well, this has to be more than this. Surely this can't be the be all and end all of this existence, is just to be born, to consume, and then to die. Like, that's boring. Like, what else is going on? Like, and I think there's a journey that we all go on individually of what that answer is to get out of that kind of consumerism, kind of hedonistic state, to find that answer. This is why people climb mountains. Like, you don't need to climb a mountain, but they feel like they need to. It's like something that they want to do. Like, it's logically you shouldn't climb mountains, but it's like we do it all the time. Like, there's people lining up to climb Everest and different things. There's people jumping out of planes. It's like, why are you doing that? There's people, trekking across deserts. You try and unpack David Goggins' operating system of why he does the crazy things that he does, why he runs 2 marathons back to back on broken feet. It's like there's something intangible. There's something, and I've heard it before. It's a slight segue into a quote that, as I talk about it out loud, man is trapped between God and beast, right? We're on this spectrum of where we can go. You can go all the way up into kind of godlike, or you can go in kind of beast-like. And there's so many different stories of how we kind of swim between these two kind of polar extremes. As your life can kind of go across, well, how you live your life can be across any of these bands of or this polarity, I should say, of where it kind of fits. And God being just a kind of like an ideal concept of your ultimate self, right? Not anything religiously, but you can go that way if you wish to. But the concept remains the same, of which you either form kind of those base kind of instincts, of which you're kind of semi kind of taken advantage of by the system that is constructed for us around the hedonistic state, around the consumerist state, the NPC state. I'm just going to look at my phone. I'm just going to watch Netflix. I'm just going to binge on YouTube. I'm just going to stay over here, don't appreciate anything, be ungrateful for everything, and and then eventually become old and bitter and die. Like it's that's can be a way that it goes. Or alternatively, you can go, well, I don't need that much. I'm pretty content with the life that I have. I'm feel I have an obligation to do something with my life while I'm here. Let me see if I can figure that out. I don't think it's eating these kind of foods, and I don't think it's hanging out with these kind of people, and I don't think it's doing this kind of work, and I don't think it's all these things. You need to have a kind of that sit down with yourself to understand what is it that I don't want, and then try and move away from that. It's what I did when I was in my early 30s. Is like, I don't want to keep doing this. Like, I don't want to keep having these kind of basal instincts of this beast-like kind of behavior. It's like, I don't want this anymore. Let me try and steer myself towards a heaven. I think Jordan Peterson talks about it. You need a negative vision of a hell to run away from, and you need sorry, hell's over here with the analogies I'm using. You need a negative vision of a hell to run away from, and you need a positive vision of a heaven to run towards. So you're propelled towards that ultimate self, because I think that's fundamentally where we all have that innate desire, or at least the people that I've connected to and resonated with, that there's a reason that we're all here, and that reason is different. Your purpose is to find that and then pursue that. And I think if we let it go, we feel that, and we have that issue inside us of that dissonance to go, this isn't what I should be doing. Not sitting in a 9 to 5, sitting in a cubicle. Like, that could be someone's heaven. That's fine. But if you're supposed to be climbing mountains and you're in a cubicle, you're going to feel that dissonance, and you should recognize that inside you. If you're ignoring that and you're drowning that in consumerism, it's going to hurt you.
There's loads of people right now with a chord striking, hearing that whether they're listening to this podcast or not, which is a vibration that they can tune into anytime. Truth FM. It's right there. It's available. And what I feel truth truly is, because it's a concept in itself. People talk about truth, and we have our own truths and all this stuff. But there is actually a universal truth. There's an undeniable truth. And it happens for me, and it's very difficult to explain and describe. But one thing I want to come off what you said was feeling. And you feel something's not right. And I say this all the time, the difference between thinking and feeling. And to know the difference truly, because thoughts can lead to feelings. And it can be like, where's the source of the feeling coming from? Which is very important through self-awareness. But mostly the relevant part I try to get people to understand is your feelings will tell you something we can't describe with words. We can't think about. It's a feeling. It's a technology, a form of communication that's happening in such a different form. And specifically for me, I find, there's a mad notification going off in my brain right now. I don't know whether that's me on my end or something that's happening. But even that, there's a feeling it shifts in my vibration. I'm going to use it as it's going off in my ears, that my feeling changes, that this doesn't feel the same way. What's actually going on there, Alex, for someone that doesn't understand the difference? What's happening specifically between thoughts and feelings?
There's the expression of feel it in your guts.
Yes.
There's a, and I'd heard someone talk about it, and I'm going to butcher it, but there's the mind and the stomach are so closely interlinked that it's crazy, in which your feeling that you have in your stomach is almost a better judgment of situations and of people and of characters and of whatever it is that you're interacting with than your analytical brain can be. And if you're ignoring of that pit of your stomach feeling when you're doing something and you know it's wrong, that's going to hurt over time. And the longer that you ignore that, and I think it ties strongly into how well nutrition you're kind of getting, you can effectively kind of not drown it out, but if you ignore it, of which this feeling that you have in your body when you're having this kind of reaction to it, but your brain might be having an alternate or making justifications over it, it's a better read of the situation than your logical thinking brain can have. So you need to play into both of these strengths. I think there's certainly, I knew through my 20s that I wasn't doing the right thing. I could feel it in my guts. I knew it. I knew it the entire time, but I was justifying it to myself up here. I wasn't connecting it to it. It was only through, I was thinking, sure, I had lots of feeling, but the feeling down here was, this isn't good. This is not good. When I'd had those days of, escaping hedonism and not going towards the things that I knew were bad for me, everything was kind of in link. Like everything was working well. The systems were working well. Happiness is not a place to be, because happiness is kind of temporary, but it was through making progress that happiness ensued, right? Because I managed to kind of formulate this day, or had these series of days sporadically, and then I'm like, oh, okay, everything's kind of clicking here. I'm making things work. So I think the difference between that thinking and that feeling is certainly it's one, the what's happening down in the base of the stomach, as well as having that gut feeling. It's like, okay, like you and I connected, and I felt in my stomach, I'm like, this is someone that I need to connect with, right? I felt it instantly. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like we're on a similar wavelength here. I felt it with some of the other guys who have joined in New Money. I'm like, okay, we're good here. And almost as a whole, that whole collective of individuals, you get a pretty good read. 99% of those guys is just like, yep, okay, yeah, we could work together, because we're operating on that same wavelengths, because that feeling of, and it's almost like potentiality, a feeling of potentiality is across the board. And I think maybe that's the meaning that kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier. You have that feeling of who you could be inside you, but you've got this potentially lizard brain that might be chasing dopamine that could be getting in the way. You have to make sure that you're playing both the feeling side and the aspect side, because I think it was Mel Robbins who said, we're not thinking creatures who feel, we're feeling creatures who think. But this can be overridden if you've got the right techniques to override that over analytical thinking brain. She talks about the was it the 5 seconds, the 5 second rule,
Mm-hmm.
of
Oh, I
which
know what you mean.
you've got
Yeah.
5 seconds. Yeah, you got 5 seconds to overrule your kind of internal programming to not do something that you want to do. Is brilliant, because you can just override.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's parts of the brain that's certainly where majority of us are operating simply Simply, it's important to understand the influence of the external environment. So the environment is not triggering. I mean, you can go in certain areas, go to a silent retreat. Like you'll be left with nothing but awareness of the mind. You'll be left with that thinking, feeling. And in, let's call it hustle bustle culture, things that are moving, financial systems, fiat currencies, for anything that runs off those matrices, it's to take you away from your senses, actually numb the senses, nullify them, or amplify them so much. There's always an imbalance in some form. But what we're learning through self-improvement and growth and everything that's going to start to expand in this space online as subject matters to talk about is there's always formulas. There's always, it's like fractals, really, isn't it? It's the same thing, just recurring in another form. We're just in this modern age. We look at certain philosophers, for example, and we know their names in books, and they speak amazing words in different ways to what the vibration was at that time in that year period. And now it might be someone like, could be Andrew Tate. It could be Alex Hormozy. It could be, there's a new guy called Hamza. It could be Alex. And these figures are coming through us, replicating all the time as spirits into physical bodies. So I want to start to bring this layer in, Alex. Peel back the layers here and understand. This is where I enjoy the show most. Who is Alex? Like, so hear me on this, Alex, right? I want to bring you into this way, this filter. And I know I'm stretching this out. I'm beautifully flowing with this glass of wine as well. So there's this feeling, I feel like there's a reason we're all supposed to be doing that as individuals. Specific purpose, value we offer to the earth. Let me summarize it. What is Alex's? What is Alex here to do, to achieve, to bring to earth?
It's my books. It's definitely, yeah. It's my one thing. Since joining New Money, I've found every possible shiny object to distract myself from doing my one thing, and I've recently just cut all of them and saying no, back to writing, because I feel it in my guts that is what I was here to do. That is what I'm here to do. I don't know how successful it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to become anything. I don't care, because the purpose of me to be here is to take all the inputs that I've had of the movies, the books, video games, all of this, and meld it into this creation of mine. And no one else can do that. And no one else is going to do that. So I have to do that, right? It's the obligation that I feel, of which I'm not going to be satisfied unless it's done. And then from there, I've got another book idea or another book idea or another thing. Like, writing is my one thing. And so I know if I stay on this gold vein, it's going to eventuate to something, or at least not, potentially not financially, but spiritually, of a level of satisfaction of, I've done it. This is something that I've wanted since I was 15. To follow that payoff is, I couldn't put it into words, because it's like, I've done it. I've become that kind of person that does these kind of things. And like I talked about at the top, a person, I feel like I'm kind of in flux, and that I'm changing. I couldn't tell you what kind of person that I would be after I've written 6 books. I've written 1, but I've got 5 to go that I want to write. I can't wait to get to that point, to go, I've done it. I've done it. I've laid it all out. I've put it all here. All these inputs that I've taken in, and then I've transmuted and then put back out, is, it's physical. You know, you can feel it, you can see it, you can read it. That's it. Like and that should be enough. You know, it's not a expectation that, you know, you can destroy your progress towards something by, you know, imagining what it's going to be, and, you know, have this which I spent for a lot of time doing. It's like, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, but not sitting down and actually doing the thing, right? If putting that outside of my head and getting it out of just going, okay, just write and just write and just write and just try and do, and just do this every day, and you'll get to where you want to get to. You know, it's to have, I think, to have that kind of laser focus now on just my one thing, follow that vein. That is the consistent theme that I've had across my life. I've got um, I'm very fortunate to have a wife and family that love and support as well, you know, and that's not something that I take for granted, and not something that I'm kind of singularly focused on writing that I ignore my kids. So I've got to, you know, I've got obligations that I need to do, and I need to provide, and those kind of things. But certainly, if if I've been given this opportunity to create and to make this, I would feel a disservice to being the one in 400 trillion choice of my existence being here, to not give it back to the world, and not, even if 2 people read it, that's cool, like that's fine. But I know it's more than that, thankfully. But it's fun to be on the producing side. It's fun to create. It's more satisfying than just consuming stuff. Certainly, if I'm, and a long-winded answer again, certainly if I'm having this day consistently and I'm doing my one thing and making as much space as I can for it within the bounds of of of, of work and with family and the likes, then I'm good. I'm fine. And that, I think, in and of itself, when you know that you're pursuing your calling, it doesn't matter to you whether it works or not. Like, in the sense of objectively, from like why aren't you doing e-commerce, or why aren't you doing sales, or why aren't you doing, you know, something that's going to make you money? Like, it's like, well, I'm not chasing I'm not chasing an outcome here. I'm chasing my truth. I'm
Mm-hmm.
chasing what it is that I feel is my core. This is my essence. I'm tapping into that, my spirit, and putting it down onto a page. And to have that opportunity to do that and do it consistently, and, you know, give this story to the world, that's enough.
There's an element of my mind that says, don't express exactly what your heart wants to say, but fuck you, mind. What I feel, Alex, is I'm incredibly proud, actually. Proud because I can relate to you, because I can understand myself. And there's different versions of ourselves out there doing that. Formulas are always the same. Are you following your heart, ultimately? And I know how, I'm going to say this very specifically, how easy it is to be offered influence. Not to take it, because it will not cast that spell. But influence, it's very easy to find. It comes towards you. You don't have to try. But if you do want to change that influence, there's something that does resonate more with your heart, you have to find it. And I just feel like what I wanted to say naturally off that is I'm proud, man, because that is the battle of life inside. It's like, what do we listen to? This has been described in allegorical form in many ways. The angel on your shoulder, the devil on your shoulder. not without the judgment and the emotion connected to it. They're always symbolizing story, messages, and to follow your heart and do what you want to do. In a way, what I really like shifted when you said, I don't care either. And I'm like, fuck, bro, neither do I. Neither do I, man. Like, as much as I
love
love
it.
what I do, I just I just care that I do it, and I don't give a fuck about anything else. Like, don't label me.
Spot on.
Like, yeah, I can cook good for people. Like, sometimes I've talked about this recently, maybe even on a show, but people want to associate you as things, and I'm always like, that's you though. I'm not like, I can maybe agree with you in this moment, so we can kind of connect here, but I'm not locked into an identity. I'm just experiencing these things that I like to do, and I don't care about anything else. Thank you, man. Thank you. It's nice to share that with you in this space. And like I say, I'm proud because I see us as workers down here, man. Earth workers. We need to just certainly be examples of what we can fulfill in our potential. And let's bring it around to this. Without the creative side of things coming in, I've noticed recently a shift in you, I would say, and I'm so far away from you. You're in Australia. We only really connect online. Online isn't the greatest even bridge for me right now. But in this case, I'm curious to know what's coming to transform your physical self in a way. I feel your testosterone is increasing. You talk about the enemy, the idea, and you bounce off the fuel of I'm fighting. I will let you explain it. Please explain to me the enemy concept and how that's changing your life physically.
Certainly. I love this concept, and not mine. Going back to the mighty Andrew Tate, good thing that he's out. Um, his Iron Mind course has a concept inside it of which you construct an enemy, an adversary, a villain of your that you're competing against, of which across the Tony Robbins has the pyramid of mastery around physical health, financial health, growth, contribution, emotions, all these different factors, of which you're tasked with in this Iron Mind course is to write anywhere from 25 to 30 lines to describe what this villain, who this villain is, and what they have. So, what do they look like? Where are they living? Who are they hanging out with? How do they dress? What do they do for work? What are they driving? How do they travel? All the different possible metrics. Engage in all the five senses. Use what do they smell like? How firm is their handshake? What is the sunglasses they wear? What is their hygiene? All these different. The more detailed you can be, the better, because what you're doing is you're crafting your ultimate self. This person that is a 10 on all these possible metrics of physically 10 out of 10, he's an Adonis. From financially, billionaire. From emotionally, like unflappable. Doesn't matter what's going on, completely under control with everything. Contribution, gives his billions away. Like all these possible metrics, and in which when you're creating this, and this is kind of the heaven aspect that you're moving towards, this is who you're ultimately competing with day in, day out. It's not Joe next door, it's not John, it's not anyone, it's you. You are competing with you. It's player versus player, but it's not player versus player in the sense that it's another person, it's internal. So this person that you've got crafted, you have to compete with them every day. So, okay, this guy's an Adonis and can bench whatever amount of money, or amount of weight, and earning X amount of money. How are you going to beat this bastard? Like, what are you going to do? Like, you got to lift, you got to go, like, you got to move, because he's crushing you on every possible metric. So it's like, go, like, because this is your ultimate self. If you've got that person that you can look at and see his traits daily and go, shit, I've got to do something about this. I've got to move. Like, he's got all this kind of stuff going on. You know, he's already got all his 6 books written. Like, he's done. He's enjoying his life. He's off to do other things. Like, he's enjoying life now. He's off to focus on the next book. It's like, God damn it. Okay, right. I've got to move on this. And I think what I paired it with is I just finished the straight line persuasion course, and Jordan Belfort had built what's called a propulsion system, of which you've got this heaven that you're moving towards, and you've also got a negative vision of a hell that you want to get away from. So I flipped it, and I actually wrote myself a negative vision for what I don't want my life to look like across all those same metrics. And now I'm in the middle of this. I think Abel put a great graphic in his Project Oracle course, of which you've kind of got this mindset of growth, of which there's a kind of abundance and there's stagnation, and you're on a bike and you're pedaling. If you don't pedal, then you're going to slide, at which I think this is the daily activity that you must do. You must be constantly pedaling towards this place, or else you're going to slide. And that's where you have that kind of magnificent day, or the metrics that I was talking about earlier, every day to try and keep. Because if you don't continue to have these days, or at least as well as these days that you could aspire to have, you're going to slide. Well, how bad could it look? Or it can look really bad, like really bad. Get as graphic and as doom gazing as you possibly can across these TIFL metrics. Like, he's overweight, his clothes don't fit, he's smells really bad, he's got terrible hygiene, he's lives from paycheck to paycheck. And those two paired together is like the biggest kick in the ass that you could get, because you're like, here's what I'm running towards and here's what I'm running away from. And you sit yourself in the middle and try and go towards the heaven, and then you're off.
Wow. I want to keep on this flow, keep on this. So when you're crafting these avatars, you are feeling emotions, right? There's like a driving force. That there's certain elements of energy that come into us. I'm tired. I can't run anymore. A song comes on that motivates or inspires you, and you're like, I've got energy all of a sudden. Or, you know, I'm tired. Oh, I finished work in an hour. It's Friday. Where's this energy coming from? I feel like it capitalizes on something that's always there, this infinite amount of energy that we obviously just have levels of being able to channel. How can we, like, if I'm on the same wavelength, what you're describing is by creating these avatars of, I definitely don't want to be that fucking guy. No way, no thank you, and shit, I've got to fight this guy soon. Inevitably got to fight him, and not only just once. I've got to fight him every day.
Every day.
Fuck.
Every day.
Go, Alex. Go. Give us some more beans on this.
So the reason that you don't have the life that you want is the story that you're telling yourself. So change the story. Change the story to why you can't be this ultimate person. And we're going back to how we rewire ourselves to go, well, I don't want to think that being a billionaire is unrealistic. It's like, that's not in my programming. Like, I think that's realistic. So you change that story, and everyone kind of scoffs, and you go, oh, that's ridiculous. Why would you think that? It's like, I'm going to get away from you, because that environment and those people, you know, you are the 5 people that you hang around with most. Change that. And that's what new money works so well, right? Because you're like, I went to a dinner for the new money guys and said, you know, all of us are going to be billionaires. And they didn't blink. It's like, of course, like, it's logical. But that's that kind of belief system, of which there's a great visual image of which there's like a sequence of what you believe is what you think, is what you feel, is how you act, and at which it kind of ties all the way back to go, well, what do you believe? Because you can change those beliefs. Fundamentally, you can go back and you can rewire this. That's why Alex Hormozy so great. He mentioned it. It's like all belief systems can be rewritten. And he has this great example of this ladder, in which you've got, on the left hand side is the left hand side is the belief system of what you think is achievable. On the right hand side is the character traits, and in the middle are the rungs, which are the skills. Now, you can only get so far if you haven't got all three in balance. So if I think I'm going to be a billionaire, but I'm sleeping in till 9 o'clock and I'm kind of flitting my time away on video games, I might be skilled, but there's only so far up the ladder I'm going to get because I haven't got the character traits. Conversely, if I'm doing all the right things, I'm exercising, I'm working out, I'm getting up early, I'm getting after it, but I don't think that's possible for me, like I'm not going to be able to do these kind of things, I'm stuck. Like you need to have all three in balance. And so it's with this ultimate version of yourself, what character traits do they have? And mine gets up at 4 a.m. every day and he gets after it. It's like, well, okay, I've got to embody that. And he exercises every day. It's like, okay, that's what I've got to do, because that's the ultimate version that I'm aspiring to be like. And if he's here and I'm here, let me change some of my belief systems. Let me change some of my character traits. Let me acquire some more skills so that I can move up the ladder. Because without that, if I have this high vision for myself of what my life could look like, but I'm not prepared to do anything about it every day, then it's just pointless, right? I'm just mentally masturbating myself into this future that I'm never going to create. But if I drill down into the character traits to go, okay, we share a similar goal of where we want to get to, but what's he doing that I'm not? What could I cut here that is holding me back? Do I know enough about time management? Do I know about how to drop into flow state? Do I know enough about sales and persuasion? Do I know enough? Probably not. So why can't I acquire these skills? Identify the gaps that you have and use that ultimate version as a barometer to go, he's here, I'm here. How do I fill the gap? How do I close that gap? And that ultimate pursuit to your ultimate self is if you construct him properly, you'll never hit it. But it's like Grant Cardone talks about, have stupidly overambitious goals. And if you're not prepared to failure, you're going to get pretty bloody close. And things are going to look pretty damn good. Even if you don't get the Bs, if you land in the millions, that could be still pretty bloody good, right? It's better than sitting on the couch watching Netflix.
Wow. I mean, Alex, how are we doing for time? I mean, we've gone 63 minutes, bro. I can push a little bit. Like I normally do about an
Sure.
hour, but we're in such a good flow. If you can push, let's flow here.
Sure. The kids aren't awake.
Great. Shh, stay to sleep.
They're good. They're good. We got the monitor. We're fine.
I love how these certain characters come up. And let me add, there's something about this time difference here that's very interesting, because collectively on the same energy, we're both in the same present moment. Time zones different collectors of energy, but this is at least happening right now in this conversation, and hopefully it's captured on film. But anyway, what I'm saying in this situation, like we're describing, that you talk about the character and he's right there. He's like there in your mind. He does exist. It's just as real as anyone else. It becomes real, and bringing something to the surface, bringing something to material through alchemy, putting in the work, making the changes. Like there's so much of this language that you're speaking that's sparking these visions for me. And some of the visions are sometimes movies or things I associate these things with as growth. But I want to simplify it to this. A lot of that of what we're experiencing is coming from somewhere that isn't here. First, it's being pulled from somewhere. It's being downloaded, you could say, but it's striking a chord with what we innately know is possible and achievable. And I was thinking as you was talking at one point that I think in my mind I can do the splits. but my physical transition to, I can't do the splits right now physically, but my physical transition would have a lot of, let's say, pain for the sake of it. And pain could actually be like the switch of energy, the feeling that we sense, like the sensation that we feel of, this is the transformation right now of you becoming your future self, that you see yourself doing splits, double back flips, being super fast. It comes with this pain. This pain process is actually progress, producing action. And why is that dissatisfying? Why is that dissatisfying? Why is that painful? Fill me in if you've got anything here that's coming as a download. It's like, why is that intuitively resistant?
We've culturally been programmed. Well, before I even do that, humans are genetically wired to go towards pleasure and away from pain. This is how we operate, is that we want to gain pleasure, we want to get out of pain. If you want to pitch anyone to buy something, do something, play with these two levers. If they can gain pleasure and they can avoid pain, then that's how you can sell to them. It's like, well, if you're selling health insurance, it's like, do you want your family to suffer? Do you want them to? It's like, ooh, ooh. It's like, ow. It's like, oh yes, I don't want them. I better buy. So you can play on that, and certainly from marketing literature talks and plays on these two factors as being critical. Culturally, we're also in the hedonistic treadmill of consumerism, right? Of which is just buy more and you'll feel better. Like you'll be fine. Don't worry about the gym. Don't worry about it. Like but pain is such a great teacher in that failure and pain can kind of be interlinked, of which it's only through repetition and objectively painful repetition that a muscle gets stronger, right? If I say to you that you need to make 200 cold calls to people you never spoke to, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. It's like, that's painful. Like, these people don't know me. What if it could go wrong? And you associate all these feelings of, of pain towards it. But if you can understand that 200 cold calls could translate into £1,000 for you, if you even land two people, then you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually there's a little bit of pleasure in here too as well. And this is what I think Arnold Schwarzenegger talked about it. It's like, I understood that every rep, every time I went to failure, that was getting me closer towards my goals, which was therefore pleasurable. So I learned out how to link pain to pleasure. And I think that's fundamentally where that shift that I find that I've come from, is that I was pursuing pleasure, but it was empty. But if I pursue pain in the sense of, what does someone quote? It's like, writing is easy. You just sit down and bleed, right? It's like that sometimes, of which that consistent pursuit of doing hard things day in, day out, objectively hard things, and that's something that we can dig into if we have that belief system over the top of it. But doing things that challenge us, doing things that push us, doing things that get us out of our comfort zone, that's where the true nature of pursuit of pain should be, because that is growing muscle. That is making us more resilient. That is making us more physically fit, more mentally strong, more, ability to deal with tough situations, to persuade, to negotiate, whatever the case may be. You don't get, and I think it's found it's a great quote. No one is a champion. They have to be forged. And it's only through those painful processes of getting up and going to the gym, working out, eating well, doing the things that no one else is doing, that creates that separation, that creates that from where you are to where you want to get to, right? It's through those, Andrew Tate talks about it. It's like, I hated every single workout that I did, but I still did it because I knew that I linked that to pleasure of my ultimate body for what I was ultimately wanting. To not do that would be the ultimate pain. And so it's kind of it's rewiring that aspect to ourselves of pain doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Pain can be linked to pleasure, and all feelings, all existence, everything is transient, right? It's not here for a long time. And if you recognize that and go, well, it could suck right now, but it, what am I doing this for ultimately? Or nothing has any meaning unless the meaning you give it. So you can change that meaning. You can change what that pain means to you. If you're going all the way to failure every time that you work out, see where you are in 6 months' time. If you're doing that workout consistently, your body is going to look remarkably different because you've associated that if I push myself to the maximum capacity, then I'm going to have rewards for that. I'm going to gain pleasure from that. So I think it's certainly finding that we're culturally and by larger majority programmed to avoid pain, but it can be the very thing that we need most.
I want to bring it to this part. There will be details in the description of this video where you can find out about what Alex is creating, what he's doing, how this is actually manifesting in daily life, what it looks like in material, what actually happens. And I'll leave the description filled with ways to get in contact with Alex, me if you wish to do so. But what I want to start to bring as we round off this very, very beautiful, really enjoyed just, I don't know whether it just feels like the timings on this has been a very interesting one as the energies have kind of merged. Very interesting. And what I want this show to achieve, if anything, because this is part of my material, is just exposure, just background noise, just some sound, just some things to hear of what isn't heard, of what's going on in all of us all the time, available. And like we spoke about off the back there, is pulling that into the realm of the surface. This is ultimately what magic is truly. It isn't here. Oh, it's here. And it's always been there. And it's manifesting in everyone's individual subjective form. This show is a version of it. There's no structure to this show. There's no grid. We just operate in the laws of time, the laws of this dimension. Whatever comes out, comes out. But one thing that is certain, it's moving towards a certain direction. That's growth, that's strength, that's awareness, that's application, that's discipline, that's focus, that's community, that's relationships, and it's mind's eye, ultimately. The true use of the mind in the most powerful way. And I have to thank Alex for being here today to enable this to actually unfold as a conversation that can get recorded, actually actualize, showing up here, regardless what the format is, and getting this out into the ether, because this is what we are pulled to do. And the modern work of what we do as humans is a very interesting thing. Very interesting, because our mind shows us loads of different Hollywood ideas. Then we got this idea of history, of this gladiator kind of realm, if anyone sees that kind of history that I see. And what we are doing here, we are exactly the same of what we've always been, manifesting in these different ways, realizing ourselves. Would you bringing this to a closure, Alex? Would you say that this is something we should encourage more of, is to share more in this space, more openly, be here, to just enable this to exchange, because most of the time, no matter what we're doing, we're all in the hustle and bustle of where time takes us. These moments in these shows, in these conversations, have to get out there now. This is the work of utility online. Add to that if you can.
The kind of resonance that exists in the connection that we've made in this is, I feel it, right? And I hope you feel it too. These kind of conversations of where you can find people that just connect on this wavelength of this energy level and just have that energy exchange. It's palpable, right? It's just so cool to, be a part of and hop on that. I think there's a analogy I like is, those underwater currents in Finding Nemo where they hop in and then they're off. That's like that, and that you're kind of swimming along naturally, and then as soon as you hop into this current, then it's just, you're gone. Which the more that we can kind of tap into those, the faster that we advance and kind of get to, a quantifiable, or at least an end state, or not potentially an end state because we're infinite, but certainly an opportunity to influence and to help others do the same in their own lives. Because my ultimate vision is to leave it better than I found it, right? That's it. That's what the books are about. This is what I'm about. Trying to leave things better than I found it. That's my core tenet across the board. And to have other people who are doing it similarly in their own way, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a movie, whether it's raising kids, whatever the case may be, you do it in such a way and you love it. You don't complain. This is, you shoulder it willingly. You take that responsibility and you own it. More people like that in the world that there are, that's it. That's just the ultimate utopia, because you have people in charge of their own existences. They're not complaining they're not falling into this victimhood. They're not falling into consumerism or hedonism or escapism. They're bearing their responsibility, and they're taking their lottery of being born as a blessing, to go, how do I maximize my time that I'm here? What can I give back? How can I help others? If you and I have done this in this podcast and helped someone go, oh, I have, previously been struggling with this thing, but I'm going to, take a little bit of what this guy's saying, what Charlie has said, what Alex has said, and implement it in my own life and make a 1% difference, that's enough. And if there's more people that are doing that, then everything takes care of itself. Everything else makes sense, because I work in IT, and we have a constant battle of, we need to do this project and that project. We've got this going on, I've got that going on. And everyone gets lost in this is all the things that we need to do and all this high up stuff. It all boils down to the team and how the team operates, of the systems that they have, and how they're talking to themselves and how they're talking to each other. If you solve that, everything else takes care of itself. Everything else. Because one, they're not beating themselves up, which a lot of us tend to do, falling into the trap of, oh, why am I so shit? Why am I doing this? Why do I do that? The quality of your life is the quality of questions you ask yourself. You ask yourself a shit question, you're going to get a shit answer. So change the question. It's like, how do I get better at this? What can I learn from this? What else can this mean? Starting with that. And also, we're all on this spinning rock together. So we may as well not have these prejudgments or ridiculous reactions to what people believe or don't believe, or whatever the case may be. I learn from everyone. I have no basis of which I my belief system is pretty much not there, because I'm like, well, I don't hold any beliefs. What is it? Loose, strong opinions loosely held. So because there might be a better option, there might be a better way, there might be a different thing that I can take and borrow and do. So to your question of making it kind of better, and how to people can kind of exist, it's getting curious, and kind of starting that internal dialogue with yourself to go, okay, why did I do that? Or why is it that I behave this way? Observe yourself and have those kind of questions to yourself. Because if you start to get kind of curious, then you can start to unpick the operating system, because you can change your operating system. You can go all the way back and tie back to your belief system and go, why do I believe that? And does that belief serve me? Because you can change that. It doesn't have to always be set in stone. And the more people that can recognize that this can be changed and is malleable, not only from a sense of what can be learnt, but what can be unlearned, the more people that tap into that wavelength and start to get to that ultimate version of themselves by starting to rewire themselves, look out, because we're going to be doing some incredible things.
I want to provide you this bridge, this opportunity to close the show by doing your this sounds so strange when someone says do your best. But give us your best shot at describing everything that we spoke about in the show today, where we went, because we went many places, and thank you. And in this case, if you could describe that in 3 key points to summarize it, like a capsule, what would those 3 words be?
Three words. Heaven, hell, operating system. OS, that's 2. Heaven, hell, beliefs.
That is a thinker.
Because that's the pendulum, right? That's how you go. The belief system is what ties in where you are in this existence, whether you're in hell or whether you're in heaven. That's you change that belief system, it tips.
May I encourage everyone to tap into their version of this, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Chatting with Charlie, where we just have a conversation really and flow into wherever it goes and look to build this frequency. Thank you very much, Alex. It's been an absolute pleasure, this one. I know I'll cherish this for a long time. If you want to get in touch with any of us, see the descriptions below. But other than that, let's keep it moving, keep it flowing. Alex, thank you very much, brother, for being on the show.
My pleasure.
And I hope today goes well for you, man. Enjoy the rest of your long enemy-filled day.
What a start to the day. What a start.
Thank you, man. I will speak to you very soon. Thanks, everyone. Peace.